All right. Well, okay. So I think we're good to go.
Cool.
Thank you very much for coming over
Thanks for
quite a
having us.
distance. And please, stage is yours.
Thank you, Kostya. My name's Avi, and this is Neve. We're from a small consultancy in South Africa, and Gurobi kindly gave us quite a large slice, so I don't know if we'll fill it. And the slides aren't anything like the great ones we've seen today. It was a lesson in how to make great PowerPoint presentations, so thank you. So we're just going to talk a little bit about, because it's the data analytics track, this tool that we built for ourselves at the company as data scientists. That's our official titles, but we're the optimization guys at the company. So let's get started. That's what we decided to call this. We'll be showcasing the projects as well that we use with our system called Hudson, and let's get into it. So basically, as data scientists, we had this pain point of collecting data, and it was always terrible. I don't have to explain to this room. I'm sure all of you have had the same experience, where you consult with a client and they're trying to transform their data, and it's in Google Sheets, and everything's a bit of a mess. So we found some common patterns that we wrote libraries for that automatically clean the data, and it saves a lot of time. So that's the library part of it. The real cool part is the process engine, which allows you to take the data, run it through your maths libraries, clean it, and then put it through advanced tools like Gurobi and forecasts, etc. And on top of that, gives you the opportunity to make shiny dashboards, so your end user can interact with the model. So it's pretty standard stuff when I say it, but hopefully the value will be conveyed in this presentation. So yeah, basically data in, and yeah, this is from the company website. It's a very brief overview of what it does, but the process engine allows you to do cron jobs and special triggers. So we work a lot with SAP data. So if a report runs, you can schedule or have a set of rules that your script will only run if this report ran, or at a certain time, or a combination of all those things. And it can get quite complicated. It's been a lesson in like data structures and tree structures. So it was I won't get into it here, but feel free to ask me about it. So it's quite sophisticated. Yeah, I won't bore you too much with all this. I think I've said everything here. The automation of data ingestion is very important for our models, as you'll see. Often the client wants things every day, every hour, etc. And so as long as their data can generate at their desired frequency, it's important that our tools also update and spit out models at the desired frequency as well, which is also why it's important to have fast solvers like Gurobi. Right, we've covered cleaning. Yeah, I think I've said everything here. So here's the real meat of the presentation, is the use cases. So uh, the depot replenishment process was my project when I started at the company, and uh, started in when 2021, 2020.
Oh, you mean the project?
Yeah,
The project was 2020.
so it took a couple of years to get like, I'd say a few months to get a first version, and then the feedback from the customer, and they want more rules, etc., etc. But now it's a sophisticated implementation. What the problem was basically deciding where to move stock from a central warehouse through to your smaller warehouses, and then onto customers. It also takes into account lead times from shipping from other countries, etc. And it's a type of network flow problem. I didn't put all the maths into this presentation because I wasn't sure who I was presenting to, but basically your objective function is to minimize costs, maximize profitability. And in this particular scenario, it's an appliance manufacturer with about 100 SKUs, 5 warehouses across the country. And so it might not seem a lot, but it turns out to be millions of variables. And when the client approached us, they were doing this by hand. One person was doing this with intuition, taking like a few days to come up with a plan. Very prone to error. The errors can lead to a lot of loss, as you can imagine, huge costs involved. But now, with the system, it runs hourly. So if demand changes between now and the next hour, the model will update, give them a brand new plan, and he doesn't have to do anything except follow it. I'll just skip. So this is the output, and it's very focused. So it's not as fancy as Annika's, but it's just a shiny dashboard. It tells you what to move here, and the quantity, origin and destination. And if the planner already set this aside, it would show the date that he did that. And it also allows for manual override. Now, that's a double-edged sword, because the planner can decide, okay, I'm going to send all the company's stock to somewhere that doesn't make any sense and bankrupt the entire company. So, however, you have to put that in, because as was mentioned in previous sessions today, the human often knows something that the system won't be privy to. They simply can't. Something might arise, a huge contract comes up and they say, no, we have to send this, override the plan. So this does allow for it. And if they do set aside stock to move, the model takes that into account. It will move it for you as well. I skipped a couple of slides to save some time. Everyone's mentioned data is important. This is an example of like bad data. Someone put there should be a code here and it says chicken. Like, where did that come from, you know? And these are ovens. What is 2.6 ovens? It's garbage, right? So you can't work with that. You have to, there's a continuous cycle of consulting and cleaning the data and telling the client, look, you need to fix this and that. This is a bit mathematical, so I don't know if I'll get into it. Another thing is they gave us warehouse capacities, and when we examined the data, we could see that often or always the max area taken up by the stock was way above this blue line, which is the supposed maximum capacity of the warehouse. So what we ended up doing was just taking the historical max and saying, okay, that's your max. But really, you got to try and fix this, because warehouse cost is an input into the model, and if you're just guessing, then it's going to be suboptimal. So there's a lot of assumptions that go into a product, and as long as everyone's aware of them, over time you can start with something functional, and then the client has a chance to fix these issues and get better and better results. So you don't stop the entire project. You push on with this sort of thing in mind. So when we first started, we tried a few solvers. We started with CBC. I don't know if everyone's familiar with, but CBC is the open source thing. We moved to Cplex. It handled it a lot better, but then we tried out Gurobi, and that was like a completely get a different ballpark. So we're very happy, and we get better optimality actually as well. So now I'll let Neve take over.
So this is the second use case we're talking about. It's a teacher assignment and timetable for an online school. So this online school has 3 curriculums and various tracks and nearly 2,000 classes and hundreds of teachers. So it's quite a big problem. The software they were using previously was not doing very well. So yeah, and they were started out in business rescue because they had far too many teachers, because they weren't allocating the teachers correctly. So yeah, so one of the challenges that we had was that their data was very bad, like Avi mentioned, but they used Google Sheets for everything. It was very inconsistent. And even when they did give us data, it turned out to be inaccurate, or it changed over time, like the rules regarding what subject leaders were able, how many hours subject leaders were able to teach, or what teachers were allowed to teach what. It was all very incorrect, and it was a process of correcting it over many months. Another problem is that they have very high staff turnover and many students joining and leaving. So they need to redo the teacher assignment very often, which is why Gurobi was very useful for this. So timetable creation is an interesting problem because in general, as long as you meet all the constraints, one timetable is as good as another. In this case, yeah, so the objective function will depend on the needs of the particular school. You might have some particular rules, like science must only have 1 lesson a day or something like that. And whether you express them as hard constraints or as objective function terms will change the time the solution takes to find, the solver takes to find a solution. So in this case, we started out with objective function terms that then all needed to be hard constraints. So we started out saying, for example, you can't have, if you have 2 lessons a day, they must be concurrent, one after the other. And we started out saying that's something nice to have, but you don't have to have it. And then they changed it to, no, we must actually have that all the time. So now any solution that the solver finds is optimal, but it does take longer to solve. So yeah, the outcomes of using Gurobi for the school is that you have less overworked or underutilized teachers. So less underutilized teachers obviously saves the company money. And if the teachers are less overworked, they're less likely to just quit. There's no time clashes anymore. the staff are freed up to spend more time on academics and improving the school and the teaching quality, and the company is no longer in business rescue. So this is the interactive, when the staff need to make changes to the teacher assignment, they can use a dashboard, which I'll show just now, but this is basically the flow. They input the changes, and if the if the timetable is feasible, they can accept or go back and change the results and download the output. So this is the shiny dashboard. Again, it's not as nice as some others that we've seen, but it gets the job done. So you can add or remove teachers and change things like whether or not teachers are allowed to teach something, and say that a teacher's gone on leave. And then once you've done that, you can generate a new teacher assignment, and it will give you a change report, and you can accept or reject it. This is an output example for the timetable. So you've got the start time, end time, and the day of the week. And then here's the teacher assignment. I just blacked out the names there. So yeah, this is the conclusion for the general presentation, but basically we've seen that data is one of the biggest challenges, and the model is only as good as what you've put into it, basically garbage in, garbage out. Having the latest data is critical to make sure you're dealing with the latest situation, and that's why having an automated pipeline to feed the latest data in so you can get the latest solution is very important. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, sure.
About the data
Yeah.
modeling, is it fully automatic? I have a question. You told us two stories.
Yes.
One is about data,
Yes.
cleaning data, importing data.
Yeah.
And the other one is about optimizing, using modeling, planning, and so
Yeah.
on. But about the data,
Yeah.
is it fully automatic?
At the moment, that's what the company, well, some of it's working on, where you could drag and drop any data unseen. It would put it through our libraries and processes, and if it was good enough, it would pass it on to forecasts or whatever you choose. If it wasn't, it would give you a report on your data health and what needs to change potentially. There's always going to be consulting, I think, to examine initially what the client's data looks like. The idea or aim is to get it as close to automated as possible. Once everything's clean, though, yes, as soon as a SAP or whatever report is generated, it feeds straight into either SFTP server or straight from SAP, pulls it in, does the data analysis all automatically.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question about the API that you used actually, because you use Shiny. I'm guessing that's R.
Yes.
You use the Gurobi the Gurobi R API.
Yeah. So
No, we use Gurobi Pi.
no. So
We use Pulp, actually.
yeah. So I don't know how any of you used R for anything. Yeah. So, yeah. So it actually turns out that R is amazing for data science, for like manipulating, checking out stats. There's a whole bunch of really cool libraries that just make it unparalleled compared to Python. However, there are things it cannot do very well, and that's sometimes because of lack of library support or something like that. So what R themselves have done is written a library that allows R and Python to talk together. So we do all the data science in
We gather the data in
in
R,
R,
and then we build the model in Python.
in Python, and then
We put it back into R at the end.
yeah, and all this is done using Hudson, so it's very seamless. You write your R code, you write your Python code, it goes straight to Gurobi and goes into Shiny, and then that's how it works. We initially didn't use Gurobi Pi because we were using other solvers that didn't know it existed, but it's very cool and makes life a lot easier. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Sure.
I would say at the stage entering new markets, no system, nothing. So I'm a high risk candidate to create data mess at the moment. If you could tell me one thing to do and one thing to avoid,
Right.
to not create such a mess that you cannot solve it anymore automatically.
Yes. One thing, sure. Don't use Google Sheets. The tendency is to make copies of Google Sheets, and that leads you away from a single source of truth that has been mentioned in other talks. And that is the source of many problems in many companies that we've seen. Having a centralized database that's managed properly with proper access is incredibly important to keeping your data clean and usable for analytics and optimization. And so that means having fields that you can't just have plain text. That's a big one. If anyone's allowed to write anything, that's a problem. Sometimes you need it, but try to have rules. So validated text fields, basically. So if it must be a number, there's a rule that checks that it's a number, etc. Things like that. It's basic things that allow you to do complex things. Because if you don't get the basics right, you can't do the complex things.
If it's not Google Sheets,
yeah.
not Excel, what would you recommend?
So of course, it depends on the size of the company. You can get away with using Google Sheets if you
Just keep one copy.
Keep one copy, yes. Don't make copies. Yes, yeah. Don't let anyone else make copies. I mean, you can't stop that, but know your single source of truth and maintain it. That's what I'd say. Yeah, sure. Cool. Thank you.